you return the host function to me.
Yes.
Okay, it does say live on YouTube on top.
Just give it a moment.
Okay. You return the host function to me.
Yes.
Okay, it does say live on YouTube on top. Okay.
Just give it a moment.
Okay. I believe I'm now the host. Am I correct?
Yes, you are.
Okay, I am. Okay. I'm now, okay, I'm trying to just to make one of the attendees to speak. Usually I right click and it gives me an option. It's not doing that.
I think you have to promote them to panelist.
I can't even do that. Maybe a co-host, maybe a host.
There's two Brooklyn Dems here, FY.
Yeah, is that why?
So I think the other Brooklyn Dem is the host.
I can try to change that. That might be our operations person. Hold on just a sec. Aaron, could you rename yourself? I'm going to hand it back over to you. Just hold on.
I'm going to rename myself. Is that okay? Can I rename myself now, Sabrina?
Whenever you're ready. And I just switched to host.
Hi, this is Aaron Maslow, and there's someone who has a phone number ending in 355. Could you identify yourself, please? Please unmute yourself.
Annette Robinson.
Annette, now we know. Okay, so that's how you're there. Fine. Okay.
Hi, Annette.
Hi, Annette. Hi, good evening. Hello.
Okay. All right. Okay, great. I think we're working. Okay. Everybody, good evening. Today is December 7th, 2020. It's now 7:54. My name is Aaron Maslow, and I am the chair of the Kings County Democratic Task Force on Gender Discrimination and Representation. I would like to call to order the 8th meeting of the task force, which was appointed in August by the Honorable Radnice Bashat, Chair of the Kings County Democratic Party. I want to disclose to everyone that this meeting is being recorded. We are also live streaming on YouTube on the website of the Kings County Democratic County Committee. Members of the task force, we do not have the minutes yet from the last meeting, November 23rd. All of you members have been emailed an agenda for tonight. Basically, the agenda is to hear comments, testimony from the public on the issue that is our mandate, which is to study, review, and come up with a proposal regarding the present situation in the rules of the Kings County Democratic Party, whereby county committee membership is to be either one male and one female or two males and two females per election district. We have been asked to come up with a solution for the 2022 election, which would start with petitioning. Members of the task force, you have been emailed a spreadsheet of responses to the request and invitation for public comments. You have been emailed several written comments which were too long to insert into the spreadsheet. Those were sent separately. I will assume that the members of the task force are familiar with the contents of the request and invitation for public comments, which was mailed to members of the county committee as well as to other Democratic Party activists in Kings County. And I do hope that the members of the public who are watching took the time out to read the brochure either in print or online on the website on the Kings County Democratic Party. We are going to call the roll of the members of the task force. I would just ask the members of the task force who are present to please introduce themselves briefly and tell the public a little bit about themselves. Wakil Ahmed. Wakil, I see that your presence is here. Can you hear me? Jared Arader.
Good evening. Thank you, Chair Maslow. Greetings, everybody, every fellow task force members, participants in tonight's meeting, and everybody watching on YouTube. My name is Jared Arader. My pronouns are he, him, and his. I'm the president of the Lambda Independent Democrats of Brooklyn. For those who do not know of us, haven't heard of us, LID is Brooklyn's only LGBTQ Democratic club seeking to increase and promote the representation of queer people throughout Brooklyn politics. By day, I'm an attorney. Thank you, Chair.
T.S. Candy.
Thank you, Chair. Hello to task force and to the public and everyone that's viewing. My name is T.S. Candy. I am a transgender Black woman. I am the executive director of Black Trans Nation. Thank you so much, Chair.
The Honorable Dharma Diaz. Okay, Ms. Diaz was with us before. She maybe have technical difficulties. I'll move on. Lisa Fain.
Thank you, Chair. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us tonight. And my name is Lisa Fain. I live in Brooklyn. I'm a longtime lesbian political activist. Just really happy that you're joining us today. This is a very important topic. My hope is that everything that we do on this task force is to increase democracy and democratic representation in this borough. And I want everybody to know that. Thank you.
Jennifer Fauché.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us this evening on this particular subject, which is of great concern, particularly in the political arena. And hopefully your voice will be heard and you'll be able to have input into a new direction for our party, grassroots level. I am Jennifer Fauché, and I come out of the labor movement, been involved for more than 40 years, and a former regional vice president for the Public Employees Federation.
Thank you. Edu Hermelin, are you here? Mr. Hermelin is a district leader. I do not see him. Sammy Oliveras.
Thank you, Chair. My name is Sammy Nemir Olivares. My pronouns are he, they. I'm a district leader representing parts of Williamsburg, East Williamsburg, and Bushwick. I'm also an LGBTQ activist, and I'm looking forward and excited to hear from all voters from Brooklyn to make sure that we continue fighting and advocating to make our party more inclusive, more open for everyone, regardless of their gender identity, and expression. So thank you for participating on this process.
Dharma Diaz, you went off temporarily. If you could give us an introduction, a little bit about yourself to the public, please.
Good evening, Dharma Diaz, 37 Councilmatic District, Councilwoman, and I want to thank you all for participating in this process. That is all.
Julio Pena III.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Julio Pena III, my pronouns are he, him, or they. I'm a district leader in the 51st Assembly District, which represents Sunset Park, Red Hook, and parts of Bay Ridge and Park Slope, and a little bit of Gowanus. Thank you, everyone, for joining us this evening on something that is really important to me and to many folks here. And I'm really looking forward to hearing members of the public speak from a place that's very important to them. And my day job is I work and support after school programs in Red Hook and East New York.
Thank you. Jessie Pierce.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Task Force, and tonight's participants on the public forum. Thank you to all who are viewing. My name is Jessie Pierce, pronoun she, her. I'm a district leader from the 52nd Assembly District, which is downtown Brooklyn, Boerum Hill, Carroll Gardens, Copple Hill, Gowanus, Park Slope, Prospect Heights. And I'm very much, this topic has been very recent in the press. I'm very much looking forward to hearing from the community where these policies and rules directly affect people and how they affect people's lives and experience, and understanding your thoughts and opinions on what we can do to broader engagement and make our party truly more open and inclusive. Thank you so much.
Josh Pierre.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Josh Pierre. I'm a district leader in the 42nd Assembly District representing Flatbush, Ditmas Park, and South Midwood. I'm also a member of LID and a member of the LGBTQ community. This topic has been something that has been discussed for a long time within our queer community, but is only now come to the forefront of the general population at a time when we are now showing acknowledgement of trans lives, and particularly Black trans lives, and other people who don't necessarily identify as binary or cisgender. I think it's critically important that we hear those voices, and I thank everyone today that is not just on the panel, but has signed up to give public testimony. This is your opportunity to be heard. Feel free to express yourself as any way in which you'd like to. And side note, Aaron, I've been trying to log on via my laptop, but I'm not being let in. Thank you.
Okay, we do hear you loud and clear.
Yes, but I don't want to be on my phone. I'm trying to log in. You guys are not really letting me in at the moment. Thank you.
1 second. According to the list here, there's nothing impeding you from logging in.
Could you please make Sabrina a co-host? I think she'll be able to solve that problem. Thank you.
Sabrina, I'm going to make you a host right now. The host.
Thanks.
Sabrina has been made the host. She's going to attempt to remedy Josh Pierre's impediment. And while she does that, why don't we move on to Annette Robinson, if you could introduce yourself to the public. It is showing me that Annette Robinson is on. Why don't we move on? In the meantime, Doug Schneider.
Thank you, everybody, for being here. I am Doug Schneider, district leader from the 44th Assembly District. I want to thank all of my fellow task force members who have worked hard to keep this process from being co-opted by other people for their own purposes. I want to thank everybody who is out there to submit testimony and say that there are allies on this call who know what it means to be an ally and who want to hear from you, because we are here to invite you into the Brooklyn Democratic Party and find the best way for you to make that happen. So thank you all for being here. I really, really look forward to hearing from you, working with you, and fighting with you to make Brooklyn the best Brooklyn Democratic Party that it can be. Thank you.
Josh Scaler.
Hello, I'm Josh. I'm the district leader and state committee member in the 52nd, which I share with Jessie Pierce, who you've already heard from. The 52nd is a series of neighborhoods in central Brooklyn from Park Slope, cutting down through Dumbo. And I'm just so glad that you all can join us tonight. Thank you so much. I'm very much looking forward to hearing your perspectives.
Thank you. Nancy Tung.
Good evening, everyone. So nice of you all to join us today. My name is Nancy Tong, and I'm the 47th Assembly District leader serving Bensonhurst, Gravesend, and Dyker Heights. I also work in the Assemblyman's office, helping constituent who doesn't speak English, another language other than English. So I help them out. Thank you.
Thank you. Jason Walker, are you there?
Yes, I'm there, Chair. Thank you. Hey, everyone. Jason Walker. I use he, him, they, them pronouns. I am the vice chair of the 57th Assembly District, and I am grateful to be a part of this task force. And I'm looking forward to hearing from the folks here today, so we can ensure that we have a very inclusive and transparent Democratic Party here in Brooklyn. Thank you.
Also a member of our task force, ex officio member, is Rodneyse Bachat, the chair of the Democratic Party. She was unable to be here tonight due to a personal matter. I'm going to ask Josh Pierre, was the difficulty remedied?
Yes, it was. Thank you.
Okay, Sabrina, are you going to return me as the host?
I am right now, Aaron. I just had to log in from a second device.
Okay. And while Sabrina's doing that, Josh, why don't Josh Pierre, you're okay? Let's do just one more test. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you loud and clear. We're good to go.
Okay. 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 Annette Robinson, can you hear me? Okay, I've asked Ms. Robinson to unmute herself. Ms. Robinson, how are you? Ms. Robinson, do you want to introduce yourself to the public? Can you hear me? Okay, it is indicated that Ms. Robinson is here. She is being marked.
Bless you.
Gesundheit. She's being marked in attendance. We do have a quorum. The meeting will now proceed with the public comments and testimony. At this point, Derek Gaskell should be able to put on his video.
Yep.
Derek, good evening. Welcome to the task force. Again, the task force acknowledges receipt of your response. Task force members, if you wish to look at it, it was in an email. I'm bringing it up myself on my screen. It's now 8:12. The task force had allocated 3 minutes for speakers unless there was a motion to extend the time. Since Mr. Gaskill is representing a large political club, is there a motion to grant Mr. Gaskill extended time?
I make a motion to let the speakers finish their full testimony.
Is there a second?
I second Josh Pierre.
Is there any opposition? Hearing none. Mr. Gaskill, you have the floor. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, task force members, for inviting the public to speak on this matter. As you can see, the testimony submitted by LID is quite wordy. I will not be reading through the entire thing. I leave that to the discretion of members to do that on their own. Again, my name is Derek Gaskill. I use he, him pronouns. I'm a proud resident of AD 53, an officer of Lambda Independent Democrats, henceforth referred to as LID. Additionally, I was one of the 6 candidates denied a seat on county committee for not declaring my gender as male or female. Tonight, I am honored to represent LID. Founded in 1978, LID endeavors to ensure LGBTQ representation throughout politics and government throughout Brooklyn. LID supports queer candidates for office, as well as those who will ensure that LGBTQ rights and interests are preserved and defended. For the purpose of this testimony, I'll be using the terms transgender, gender nonconforming, and non-binary, shortened to the acronym TGNCNB, to refer to a broad spectrum of gender identities and experiences that do not fit neatly into the category of male or female. It's easy to say that the sex parity rule was created at a time when TGNC and B people were not in Brooklyn, but let me be clear, TGNC and B people have always been in Brooklyn. The rule was as discriminatory then as it is now. Dismantling this rule is not progress. It's simply righting a wrong. Framing this forum and this question and this discussion in any other way is an erasure of our shared queer history. Broadly speaking, the majority of the proposed amendments lumps candidates into 3 categories: male, female, and gender non-binary. I loathe to use such categories, and it's reprehensible to enact such a simplistic view of gender on individuals. Gender is a fluid spectrum, with gender identities being unique and private to each individual. In a written testimony, LID has evaluated the proposals distributed by the task force and has indicated whether such proposal is to be strongly recommended, not recommended, or discouraged. In guaranteeing inclusion of TGNC and B individuals, LID's policy calls for the dismantling of barriers to participation. Such barriers include mandatory caps on participation by TGNC individuals and the disclosure of a person's gender. Rules that impose such requirements impose hardship on TGNC and B individuals, particularly in the realm of privacy, security, and safety. In general, LID disfavors proposals that would limit the number of TGNC and B people that may serve in any given electoral or assembly district. Simply, just like most elections, the top vote getter should win. Additionally, LID disfavors proposals that would enforce candidates to declare their gender identity publicly, as this leads to miscategorizations, privacy, and security concerns. LID's stance is clear. There should be no gender designations necessary to join and participate in Brooklyn's Democratic Party. This aligns with proposal number 6 brought forth by the task force. LID firmly believes that this proposal would lead to greater and freer participation of TGNC and B individuals within the county committee and the Kings County Democratic Party at large. Thank you for your time, and I sincerely look forward to working with the task force members on how to make an inclusive and transparent party.
Are there any members of the task force who have any questions for Derek? Jessie Pierce.
Thank you, Chair. Hi, Derek. Thank you so much for your testimony and taking the time to speak with us today. I was hoping maybe you wouldn't mind going through your personal experience in terms of your engagement with the party regarding petitioning and, you know, eventually having your petitions thrown out and being one of the plaintiffs. If you could just share a little bit about what that's been like for you and what your experience has been overall.
Sure. Thank you for the question, Jessie. We will be presenting testimony on behalf of all plaintiffs, and that will be tomorrow by Angela. So I look forward to their presentation. My personal experience is I am an officer of LID, though I am relatively new to engaging in Brooklyn politics. I believe it was at a Rep Your Block meeting that I learned about what county committee even is after living in Brooklyn for close to 10 years. At the Rep Your Block meeting, it was proposed that you can run for a male or female seat. I simply asked, are there other options? And they said that they would allow me to run without declaring my gender, but they would not ensure that I would make it onto the county party. We went out, collected our signatures in the middle of a pandemic, just like everyone else who was running for county committee seats. And when the petitions were submitted, they were denied. As a result, I was not able to be on county committee.
Task force members, is there anyone else who has a question for Derek?
Yes, Josh Pierre.
Proceed.
Hey, Derek, how are you?
Hey, Josh, nice to hear from you.
Good, bro. Could you speak to the non-political aspect of why you personally feel that this is important? Because there are members of the public who, despite the fact that they probably have a trans person or a non-binary person living right next door to them in their building, are just like completely unaware. So could you please speak to the personal aspect of how you feel and why this is important to you?
Absolutely. Thanks, Josh. I've lived in Brooklyn for close to 10 years now. I've lived in my election district for 8 of those years. My election district was approximately 6 blocks large. I love my election district. I love my assembly district deeply. I have a master's degree in urban policy and leadership, as well as a certificate in civic engagement. I deeply believe in participation in local politics. Everything trickles up. By having the categories of male and female, I felt misrepresented. I was also completely shocked to learn that in Brooklyn in 2020 that this was a requirement. So I felt like I had to choose between either running in the male category and lying about my gender, or not running at all. Neither of these are acceptable.
Thank you.
Thanks, Josh.
Members, do you have any other questions for Derek?
I have a question.
Lisa Fain.
Yes, you had talked about the history of the rule. And you know that it was put in place to encourage and protect and increase participation of women in a process which to this day is not welcoming to women or creates certain barriers. It is still a boys' club in many ways. You had talked about the rule being discriminatory when it was originally enacted. Do you believe that all rules protecting the rights of women and encouraging their participation in areas where they're not usually, welcome, do you consider that discriminatory?
I simply don't think that people who are minority or not empowered should be pitting themselves against each other. By including transgender people, we are also creating more seats for women. I think it's been proven by this task force that there are more women willing to run than there are seats. Additionally, the counties neighboring us don't have these rules, and they have more women participating.
On the county committee, but there are other levels as well. I just wanted to get an idea of that. I just asked that I guess I'm a little taken back by you saying that this rule is discriminatory when it actually is protecting another class of people, a sex-based class. And that seems to violate intersectionality. So I won't talk anymore, but that was the basis of my question. Thank you very much for answering it.
Task force members, any other questions?
Yes, it's T.S. Candy, on behalf of Black Trans Nation. I have a question for Derek. Could you tell me how many, because I hear you saying a lot about transgender women and transgender and TGNC. Could you tell me how many transgender women is seated in the area that you are doing a lot of your work in or on your board with your organization?
I'm not the president. I don't have those statistics in front of me. So
okay.
I do not know. And as far as my election district and my assembly district, I defer to my district leaders on those numbers.
Well, I'm saying like in regards to, you here on behalf of Lambo. So I would like to know like how many transgender women do y'all have on your board? Or do y'all have on your board that's actually a part of Lambo that you're speaking on behalf of?
I'm gonna say off the top of my head, and I am happy to check those numbers. I'm gonna say that there is 1 active and previously 2 transgender women. We are actively looking into recruitment.
Thank you. Any other task force member questions?
Aaron?
Sammy Oliveris, yes?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Thank you, Derek, for coming and speaking from a very personal experience. I'm very proud that you're one of the constituents of Assembly District 53rd and to have the courage to share this experience despite the challenges and been this, I'm sure, a very emotionally triggering, even traumatic for many people that are already discriminated and have to go through this exclusionary process. Derek, you specifically talking about the rule, you're coming on behalf of LID, dismiss the rest of the proposals beyond the number 6. And you alluded the fact that most of them lump a very large number of identities in a 3rd category of gender. Could you speak a little bit about, as a TGNC folk yourself, what does that mean for transgender, gender non-conforming people to be categorized in those categories that are very limited? What do you think about the other rules will have an impact into the way that the LGBTQ community see themselves and would like to be able to identify themselves to run?
Absolutely. So when I speak to non-binary people being lumped together, what I'm specifically speaking to is how the experience of gender is deeply personal, right? Like my gender identity is different than your gender identity is different than many people's gender identity. For example, the 6 plaintiffs who put forth the lawsuit, we can fit ourselves into the category of non-binary, gender non-conforming, but the 6 of us all have different words to identify ourselves. So to create the categorization of non-binary is a miscategorization. So for myself, I identify as gender fluid and I identify between the areas of trans man and trans masculine. This means sometimes I could be in the male C, other times my gender fluctuates to be not male and trans masculine. So to put me in the same category as say someone who's gender non-conforming or trans feminine is incorrect.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions from members of the task force?
Yes, Josh Pierre again.
Yes, Josh.
So Derek, within the various categories, there's like a whole diversity and array of people that we are trying to make sure feel included. One of the questions that I've had a hard time answering, because I don't have the statistics on it, and just difficulty getting people who are in the public sphere to understand is what they basically would ask me, like, what portion of the population do we as queer people see as being gender non-conforming? Do you have any stats on that or anything you can say to explain that for the general public to understand?
I do not have a stat on that. That's unfortunately something that is hard to capture. It's something that's not asked about in the census or any sort of data. There are a couple of numbers that get thrown out there all the time, but the miscategorizations are leading to the numbers. So in this case, the data is the data. That there is no data shows itself to why the number that speaks. I will say in Brooklyn, we are incredibly gender diverse. Specifically, and maybe not specifically, but I can speak for my AD and my ED. In my ED alone, I know at least 6 people who identify as transgender, gender non-conforming, or non-binary. That's within a 6-block radius.
So that's all within, not within the AD, but specifically just within an ED.
That's specific to my ED and my experience being a good neighbor in my ED.
Thank you.
I have a question for Derek. You may have mentioned it before, but I'm not sure. Have you been politically active before this year? And was this your first attempt to run for anything?
This was my first attempt to run for county committee. I've been a member of LID for approximately 2 years, probably going on 2 years now. Previously, my political activism has been outside of the Democratic Party.
And again, what led you to decide to run for county committee?
I have been involved with LID for a while. The idea of representing my election district, where again, I pride myself on being a good neighbor, really inspired me, but also the idea that I could use it as a vehicle to talk to my neighbors about local politics, what county committee is, and engage more people was the real big draw for me. I don't intend to run for a higher office.
I was just curious, like, how did you find out? Because there are people who run for county committee, and we know some are recruited by clubs, but there are other people. And I was just, in your instance, I was just curious how you found out about this position.
Absolutely. I found out about it initially through the president of LID, Jared Rader, and he encouraged our club to be involved at all levels of government, but particularly the local level, as our focus is Brooklyn.
Thank you. Any question? Josh Scaller.
Hi, Derek. Thank you so much for joining us. Super appreciate having you here. I have a question about the implementation of the current at-large positions, which I understand you have volunteered to fill. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Yeah, thank you. How do you feel about the abridged rights of those seats, specifically the current implementation of these at-large seats, because they don't have a geographic location, would preclude you from voting in instances to fill vacancies on overlapping districts, which of course is one of the primary roles for the county committee. So knowing that seat doesn't have those same rights, do you feel like it's an adequate solution, or can we not stay with that and move forward?
Thank you. Hi, Josh. I think I understand the reasons why they were created as temporary positions. And while I do commend the task force on finding this sort of middle halfway ground for this round of county committee, it is absolutely not sustainable going forward. Additionally, they are at large for the whole assembly district. I love my assembly district. I don't know everyone in my assembly district, and I don't want to try to. I ran for county committee to represent my ED specifically.
Great, thank you so much.
And if I could just follow up on that, I take it then, Derek, that the at-large position situation just being temporary, you would not want that extended for the permanent future?
No.
Okay. T.S. Candy, did you have your hand up?
Yes, yes, I did. Thank you, Chair. I had another question for Derek. When you had mentioned the slides, you said male, female, and gender non-conforming. I have a question. Why did you void a spot for transgender women and men?
I don't believe I did. I'm sorry if I'm misunderstanding your question, TS Candy.
Like when you first had got to speaking and you was like, oh, well, you feel as if that there should be 3 columns. You said 3 columns. You was like male, female, and gender non-conforming.
Correct.
And you voided out.
Sorry, the categories that exist in the proposal group the categories of gender into male, female, and gender non-binary. That's how it's laid out in the proposals. And if you're asking if I think trans women and trans men don't fit into those categories, binary identified trans men and trans women absolutely fit into the categories of men and women. I'm sorry if that's not what you were getting at.
Binary, I'm a transgender woman. I have an identity. So transgender women do not fit in a binary column. We have an identity. Binary is not, binary is, you really don't have an identity. You don't fit or whatever like that. So you taking my identity away from me.
I'm sorry if that's not absolutely what I was going for. I think that this also speaks to my point about categorizations and how it's impossible to categorize people's genders, which is why we should get rid of the rules completely. But I apologize if I invalidated your identity in my explanation.
May I follow up on that? Is it your position then that because there is this uncertainty perhaps about how others might identify members of this community, that it is best that we avoid any terminology and just let everybody run for the position and the top winners win?
Absolutely.
Okay. Did I see someone else's hand up in the corner of my eye? I thought I saw someone else. Okay, I'm just getting an email on some technical matter regarding, I think somebody's froze who's in the audience. Okay. Okay, I believe there's no more questions for Derek. And it's now 8:34. Derek, thank you so much. That was a
thank you, Task Force.
A really cogent
Thank you, Derek.
written presentation. I really appreciated the analysis that went into your written presentation, including with the footnotes. So Derek, I'm going to return your status to attendee.
Thank you.
And this way you'll be able to follow that way. You don't have to go on to YouTube. For those members of the public who joined us late, I want to welcome you to the 8th meeting of the Kings County Democratic Task Force on Gender Discrimination and Representation. We're going to continue with the public comments and testimony. Members introduced themselves. I didn't want to take away time at the beginning. I didn't want to talk about myself, but I'll just briefly use this opportunity just to say a few things about myself. I have been involved in Brooklyn politics for about 50 years. I started as an 11-year-old in 1968, helping a candidate I believe was supported by IDOF at that time, Leon Brickman, who ran for state assembly and was affiliated with the Eugene McCarthy movement for president. And I've been involved in Brooklyn politics ever since. When I became an attorney, I began specializing in election law. I also want to tell the public that as the comments have been coming in, they've been logged into a spreadsheet for the members of the task force. Haven't been able to get to yet those that just came in late last night or today. My goal is to get them, even if they're not in by tomorrow. The task force will have them, and if there are people who want to testify after tomorrow, we'll see how we proceed. We did receive these comments have been very helpful in my opinion. There were a number that were identical, but I think that shows that there is a movement behind a particular proposal. I don't want to prejudice the task force in terms of which one it should be that they want to adopt. I'm sure the task force will go through all of the comments, read them. Unfortunately, we did receive some, this being the world that we live in, we did receive some comments which were completely inappropriate, hateful, homophobic, anti-Semitic, and those have not been shared with the task force. Some were very particularly virulent, including those accusing me, an Orthodox Jew, of taking a position which is contrary to Orthodox Judaism. A decision will be made by me about the virulent ones, what to do with them. And let's proceed further. We do have, I see as an attendee, Antonia Martinelli, and task force members, if you can look at your spreadsheet, you will see that Ms. Martinelli does appear early on in the list, in the comments section, and really does go into a discussion of various proposals by number, giving an opinion one way or the other on them. And I'm going to, at this point, promote Antonia Martinelli to a panelist so that Antonia can be, and there's Antonia Martinelli. Good evening. Ms. Martinelli did have a lengthy presentation, and it's now 8:38. And I would ask the task force if we could extend Ms. Martinelli's time at this point to 7 minutes at least to give her to go through her presentation. Is there any objection to that?
No objection, Aaron, but I just wonder how many you would like to get through tonight, just so I can sort of set my own expectations about how long we should go.
There are 7 attendees on who, not including Derek Gaskill, and not including Antonia Martinelli.
Okay, thank you.
No, without objection, Ms. Martinelli, you have until 8:46 to make your presentation. If it takes you that long, please go ahead. You have the floor.
Hello, Brooklyn Democratic Party. Thank you for appointing a task force on gender discrimination and representation. And thank you to the task force for exploring and compiling the facts on this very important issue. Of the solutions proposed, I believe proposal 9 is the most equitable. In this proposal, seats would be designated either female or other. Proposal 9 would address the complaint argued in Barat versus NYC Board of Elections that the Kings County Democratic Party's rules discriminate against non-gender conforming candidates. Such candidates would not have to assign themselves a gender upon filing a petition for an other seat under this proposal. At the same time, Proposal 9 guarantees 50% of candidates identify as women. Unfortunately, Proposal 9 doesn't lift the barrier to women from filing for more than 50% of county committee positions. The data on petition filings for Kings County Democratic Committee demonstrates that women outpace men in filings and could hold more seats if not restricted by gender. While this data is compelling, I personally have not seen data in the other counties where there is no provision on equal division of filings between the sexes. Such strong participation amongst women in Kings County may be a direct result of this provision. Proposal 8 addresses the barrier issue by ensuring 50% of seats are held by women and allowing women to participate in open competitive seats. However, absent an assessment of the constitutionality, I cannot support Proposal 8. Bias against women in leadership and politics is pervasive on top of structural barriers to participation. In fact, the nature of work and childcare during COVID has only exacerbated structural barriers to participation for women. Therefore, I cannot support proposals for rule changes that fail to acknowledge gender at all or fail to maintain a minimum 50% of female representation. 52% of New Yorkers identify as female, but we are underrepresented in all strata of politics, including our state legislature, which is only 32% women. I would not want to inadvertently diminish participation amongst women in the name of equity. Anecdotally, when I was encouraged to run for a seat on the Kings County Democrats, the idea was put in the context of open seats for women in my district. One wonders if the suggestion would never have entered my ear had there not been a gender designation. Thank you so much for the opportunity to weigh in on this issue. I support Proposal 9.
Thank you, Ms. Martinelli. Members of the task force, do you have any questions for Ms. Martinelli? Ms. Martinelli, I have a question. I'm sorry if I missed it. Are you a member of the county committee?
I am.
And is this your first term of office?
This is.
And may I just ask, as I asked our previous speaker, how did you learn that this position existed?
A woman in my yoga class told me about it.
Okay. And were you on a petition jointly with any other group, or you did it independently yourself?
Rep your block.
Okay. Okay. Task force members. Is there any other questions for Ms. Martinelli? I see Jared Arader has his hand up. Jared Arader, please.
Ms. Martinelli, thank you. Thank you so much. Would this proposal force transgender non-binary people to run against men separately?
Would this proposal force gender non-conforming people to run against men separately? I suppose it would.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Josh Scal, did I see your hand up? Nope. Did I see somebody else's hand up? Nope.
Yes, it's T.S. Candy.
T.S. Candy, yes.
Yes, I have a question. As a transgender woman, why would you want a transgender woman and gender nonconforming to be in a category that's considered as other, and not only that, have us run against men while women, cis women are just seated?
So my impression, and maybe I misunderstood what was written in the brochure that I was sent. My impression is that whatever your gender identity, if you identify as a female, you would run as a female. So it would, it's not, for me, the question wasn't gender identity, it was gender non-identity. So I am perhaps uninformed, but I thought that a transgender woman would run as a woman.
How do we take control over data? How do we keep data? Because if transgender women, if we run from women, how can we have successful data? Like it's becoming like, because we're overlapping when it come down to us being in a women category, it's like, it's more, y'all data will go up and our data will go down. So that it's like a data issue. It's like, that's how we get our healthcare. It have to be a certain amount of transgender women in a state for us to be able to get any type of federal healthcare. So it's like a data and a percentage thing. So it's like, with us being with us being all in one area as other, it's like, how can we control the data of cis women, transgender men, but gender non-conforming, gender non-binary? How can we do data?
I don't know. I really can't answer that question. I apologize.
If I could follow up though on that, you spoke up in favor of Proposal 9. Proposal 9, which happened to be suggested by one of the academic experts who appeared before us, he suggested having a category female and a category of others. In the brochure, there's also a Proposal 8, which would have a category female and a category open competitive. In other words, the only people who could file for the female slot would be female, but anybody could file for the open competitive. The idea of this would be to preserve at least 50% female membership. Do you have any position on Proposal 8, Ms. Martinelli?
Well, yeah, I'm concerned it's not constitutional. I don't know. I'm not an expert. I'm not an attorney, but
Okay. If it could be done, would you be in favor of that?
I'm not sure. It sort of like gives an artificial advantage to women. So we're being given this
Yes, there would
separate
be
category, and then we're also being permitted to run for this other seat. It just seems like it's a little unfair. But
Okay.
could I go back actually to what T.S. Candy was referring? She asked a very difficult and profound question, and I think it's something that you need to sit with for a while before you can answer. And I just think that, the entirety of one's identity can never be summed up and should never be summed up by gender. I mean, we all fill in the blanks when we run for office, right? We all fill in the blanks with how we feel about this issue and that issue, and how we feel about transgender female healthcare. And I fill in the blanks about how I feel about cisgender female healthcare. And that can all coexist under, a female umbrella, I think.
Okay, thank you. Did we have any other questions? I'm scanning the board. Jessie Pierce.
Yes, hi. Thank you so much for joining us and for speaking. So I appreciate your interest in protecting women, and understand that's your main motivation for your testimony. I'm curious if you have other thoughts around other intersectional issues such as race or class when it comes to county committee, and if there's any representation from those categories that concern you that you would want to protect when it comes to county committee.
I just want to stay on topic. That's that's a big can of worms, and I really need to deal with specifics. I really need to know what the specific proposal is, and I'm not gonna, just off the cuff that. It's irresponsible.
Sure. I think my point was that gender has been brought up as one category or group to protect from a county committee perspective. So what makes gender special from examples like race or class when it comes to county committee participation?
Perhaps it's not. Perhaps it's not.
TS.
Yes. Yes, I have another question. I'm sorry. I was just wondering, what is your opposition for proposal 6?
I'd have to read it again. Let's see.
Proposal 6 is everybody runs. Nobody identifies who they are, what they are. The top winners win.
Yeah, I feel like we need to preserve half representation for women for people who identify as women. Look, we are very underrepresented, and the bias against women in politics is well documented. I mean, we saw it in the last election. We are over 50% of the population, but we're only 32% of the state legislature. I just don't trust that if this category doesn't exist, women won't be recruited, women won't be considered. There's just something in the mind of the voter that automatically checks the mailbox. Not the mailbox where you get the mail, but the mailbox for men. And I don't trust that they'll vote for women.
Okay, so I have one more question.
TS, Lisa did have her hand up for a while, and she...
I yield back. My apologies.
Okay.
That's okay. Thank you, TS.
Lisa Fang.
Yeah, I just wanted to thank you very much for your testimony and for your willingness to join county committee. And I think some of this, in terms of some of the questions that were getting a little complex, is because we need to keep being clear that there's sex and there's gender. And I think what you're talking about are sex categories, which is what the law is based on, is what the rule is based on. And when we're talking, and even Jessie, you use the word gender, but what we really need to be clear, and that was something that we as a task force have been educating ourselves about all the different categories of gender, and also the difference between sex and gender, which is under debate. And there are people with many different positions and beliefs around this. So I just wanted for you to sort of clarify that. Sounds like that's where you're coming from when you're talking about these rules. Is that true?
Perhaps you could define it. Perhaps you could define it for me. Is identity gender?
That it's very much. We've had quite a few people speak in front of this task force to go into in depth with some of those questions, and some of them are philosophical questions, and some are based on belief. And there are that the law and the rule as written right now is sex-based, and what we're trying to find out is how we can accommodate gender and people on the gender spectrum at the same time being able to protect. I think, in my opinion, hard fought for sex protections.
Right. I feel that I may have insulted one of your members just now, and she left, and I apologize to her if I offended her. I haven't spent months on a task force on this issue. I'm not an expert on this issue by any stretch of the imagination. This is a very complex issue, and I respect the complexity of the issue. And I think we also have to respect the public's lack of knowledge on this issue. And we're not always going to say the right thing. And when we ask a question, it should be acknowledged and taken at face value. So I did not intend to offend anybody.
Okay, I see Doug Schneider raised hand, Jessie Pierce, but I thought I saw Jennifer's before. Did you have your hand raised, Jennifer?
No, I didn't.
Okay, okay. Doug Schneider, your box moved. You're in this corner now. Go
Yeah.
ahead, please.
First of all, I just want to thank you and let you know that I think the task force takes very seriously what you just said, and that this is a non-judgment zone, and that questions are not statements, and statements are not outrages. So, I very much appreciate your perspective and your willingness to talk about what is a difficult issue for a lot of people and a new issue for a lot of people and well-meaning people. And so I can say, speaking for myself, I received what you had to say as all in good faith, and very much appreciate everything that you've said, and I'm happy that you felt important, that this was important enough for you to come and speak. My question is that as we think about this idea of what the gender segregated seats mean for female representation writ large, to make the statement that there is some causation between the 50% rule and the larger representation once you get into paid office. Wouldn't you need to know isn't there something that needs to connect those two data points? Why is it that we believe that either it is the fact of the 50% rule that we have so much representation, or vice versa, right? That if we take away the 50% rule, all of a sudden female representation in elected positions would plummet. Aren't we really trying to make a causal relationship when all we have are correlations?
I was given a certain amount of data from your organization, and that's all I have to work with. I don't know what the data is in other counties. So I am actually asking you, what is the data elsewhere where they don't have this separate designation for female seats?
Yeah,
I'm not saying necessarily is the case that if you take away this designation, the women's participation is going to go down. I'm not willing to take the chance.
I think I asked the wrong question. I think you might have misunderstood what I was saying. What I was asking was about the connection between county committee, running for county committee, and how that influences or how that impacts running for higher office. Meaning, is there any connection between the fact that we have right now 50% of their seats segregated for women and 50% for men, and if we eliminated those so that there was no longer a segregated election, that somehow that would influence what happened when people ran for a higher office, meaning like somehow that the county committee was building a bench or something like that. My question is there a connection that you're trying to make between the importance of the 50% rule and the representation of women into paying legislative office?
Well, to the extent that perhaps it's, the Kings County, these county committees are breeding grounds for future political careers. I don't, maybe they aren't, but you're running for higher office, right? But one would hope that they would be.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. I would like to just do, if it's okay with the task force, 2 more questions, and then we'll go on to our next speaker. I did note that Jessie Pierce had her hand up, and then TS 1 more question.
I don't have a question. I have point of information.
Point of information from Sammy Oliveras.
Yeah, thank you. No, a question was posed, so I was just sharing a point of information that there are indeed other counties in New York City, like Manhattan, who does not have chosen not to choose the gender binary rule. Let's remember that this is very optional. The state constitution says that if you want to have a gender rule, it has to divide equal representation of the sexes, but you don't need to have one. Brooklyn, Manhattan does not have a gender rule, and over 60% of county committee members identify as women, just to answer the question.
Thank you, Sammy. Thank you. Jessie Pierce.
Thank you so much. I do want to just take the time to thank you to come to a very uncomfortable situation and present your point of view, and same for all of our participants. Everybody's taking a leap of faith and making themselves vulnerable to the public and to us. So thank you so much for your energy and interest here. I also just kind of want to speak to that what you mentioned earlier, that not being an expert on gender and gender identities, and I think that makes a lot of sense. And I just also want to call out the fact that, as Derek mentioned earlier, gender identity is very personal, and so which is why the categorization of genders and protected class when it comes to county committee and making sure people are representative gets a little dicey. And so anyway, I just want to at least acknowledge your statement around not being as familiar in this space, and say that there's a lot of detail, and hopefully we'll hear from additional participants who live in this space as well. And so I just want to state that it's very valid. And so thank you very much.
I just want to ask Ms. Martinelli, I'm not sure I caught it. What neighborhood do you live in?
Gowanus.
Thank you. And the final question for Ms. Martinelli, one question, T.S. Candy.
Yes, just a question. Do you work inclusive with any transgender or non-gender binary individuals with any of the work that you do?
I don't believe so. In maybe in my prior career as a dancer, but not currently.
Thank you.
Okay, I want to thank Ms. Martinelli for your written presentation and for your oral testimony. And Ms. Martinelli, procedurally, I'm going to return you to the role of attendee so you can continue to watch this.
Thank you.
At this point, bear with me. And I'm going to next call on Antonio Lopez. Mr. Lopez did submit a large, a lengthy testimony. Members, it is in the second part of your spreadsheet. In fact, he has, Antonio has some citations, references at the bottom. So, Antonio, I am promoting you to panelist so that you could be seen and heard. And I see your image there. Let me just, oh, you moved. There you are, Antonio. Okay. Antonio, it's now 9:05. Let me just note the time here. And we did previously limit to 3 minutes. So why don't you take your 3 minutes? Let's see how you're doing. If necessary, we could make a motion to extend your presentation and testimony. Go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you, committee members, for giving me the opportunity to present tonight. My name is Antonio James Lopez, and I am a transgender man. And today I wanted to take the opportunity to talk about actual equal representation, which I think is something that doesn't get talked about enough. And at the end, I will share my thoughts on the proposals. But first and foremost, we haven't had equal representation since 1619, when our fellow African Americans joined this country. And I feel like that always has to be said and acknowledged, given that, you know, I presently in my life have an African American woman as a partner in life, and I think that matters. And still today, we still don't have equal representation, and there's no real representation for minorities. While I am writing this in an effort to advocate for the transgender community, please let it be known that I want to speak for all of those members of society that are not represented equally and suffer at the hands of those who misappropriate their privilege and power. Again, my name is Antonio and I am a Hispanic transgender man. I live in Brooklyn and I have firsthand experienced discriminatory practices in my community where I live, my workplace, and in the healthcare system. However, I rather live authentically and raise awareness in support of all of those who at times need to deal and manage the prejudices and biases and even violence in our community. People should no longer need to be denied the right to be respected or treated with dignity. We should also have a seat at the table. Diversity and inclusion needs to be more now than ever part of our political and cultural landscape, as it supports advancing a more equitable agenda that provides safe spaces for us to engage in honest conversations about true equality. My goal here today is to ensure that everyone has an opportunity to be heard, seen, and acknowledged. The fight for equity is arduous, and every social group should have equal opportunity to have some representation, and also have people at the table that can understand and relate to our life experience. The disparity of representation, while improving slowly, it continues to be under-addressed. Currently, in the 116th Congress, we only have 130 women. We have only 54 African American. We have only 39 Hispanics, 20 Asians, and on or about 4 American Indians. Recently, in the last few years, we now welcome 10 individuals into the Senate and to the House of Representatives, all who are representing the LGBT and are openly representing our movement. Most recently, we know that the Trump administration has put our community under siege, blocking healthcare benefits and important medical procedures. In addition, the transgender community has been fighting for the removal of discriminatory practice in the workplace. We should mention that in New York City alone, there's about 26% of unemployment rates in our community for transgender. I do agree that in order for us to provide better representation, we in fact need to address the fact that it shouldn't just be an issue of gender or biologically designation of genders into our community. It is my hope that this task force considers the proper allocation of seats that allows for accurate representation of its members and community, and it helps move legislations that address the needs of transgender and binary members. I further ask that gender not be used as a qualifier to serve, but to be used as a proper allocation of seats to increase representation without dismissing everyone's rights and opportunities to be equally represented. Thank you.
Task force members, does anybody have a question for Antonio? Jennifer Fauché.
Hi, I'm so glad that you gave this testimony this evening. I understand a lot of the concerns that you brought forward tonight. And I guess for the scope of this task force, we can just be the beginning of opening a door, but the problems are so wide range. And what has struck me this evening is particularly in the medical area and the barriers that have been brought up. And I imagine this would be a platform to be able to advocate for those things. I am wondering how you feel about identifying in terms of the categories that were spelled out. Do you have a particular proposal that you would support?
Well, first and foremost, I think that it is important for statistical purposes to give everybody the opportunity to self-identify. I also believe that in this country, we are not equitably represented, and I think we need to be able to protect the rights of, obviously, women to be able to have these seats and access to the seats, as we are still fighting for equal rights for our counterparts. I do believe that, as has been said before, gender identity is a very complex and fluid thing, but I do believe that if I want to run, I want to be able to be transparent and actually be able to check a box that says that I'm a transgender man or a transgender woman. And I do not want to be invisible or dismissed. I am who I am, and people should know who I am.
Okay, that's very good to hear, because that's not been shared with a lot of the speakers this evening. So it's a different perspective on this topic.
Yes.
And so in your case, you wouldn't mind having a box to check and to identify as such when you ran on a petition.
Absolutely. I think it's part of removing the blinders and allowing people to see who their demographics are and who is running for office. And to have other transgender members see that other transgender people actually care and are willing to represent and fight for the things that we don't receive currently, I think it matters. And so it would be great to have the opportunity to simply say who we are when we are running for these seats.
Now, I have a follow-up question to that, because a lot of the testimony or statements that were submitted to the task force, there was an overwhelming number of respondents that clearly had concerns about coming out because they feared for abuses of all different natures, violence that they might be subjecting themselves to because of the society that we live in, and particularly these times that we live in. And I wonder how you feel about those particular concerns.
Well, quite frankly, I am terrified. I am terrified for my transgender women who, in this year alone, we've had to put to lay 18 members of our community, and probably more. Last year, we buried 26. So all I'm trying to say is, I think it's really, really important that there are some protective guidance around that. I mean, people should have the right to self-disclose if they don't feel comfortable or safe. But I think there also needs to be a large level of education that goes around just the transgender movement. But there's violence everywhere you turn around because there are ideological differences. But I feel that we shouldn't be invisible to the population. We should be seen and respected and treated with the same level of dignity as everyone else.
I have a question, Antonio. Are you currently a member of the county committee?
I am not.
Okay. What neighborhood do you live in?
Ocean Hill.
Okay. We are running a little late. Is there any other questions for Antonio?
I just want to do an information check. That was 37 transgender that we laid to death, but in counting, so it's up to almost 40. It's 37 that is noted, but of course, a lot of our deaths don't hit the media. So I just wanted to...
Accurate. You're correct. You're correct in that number. Thank you for the correction. I knew it's much higher. I just couldn't find the right number.
I got you.
All right. One last question. Lisa Fain.
Well, thank you, Antonio. It's been really great to hear and to see you and to have you talk about how important it is for us to see who you are and be able to state that. It's very, very powerful. I didn't know if you were specifically in favor of one of the particular proposals.
You know, I read them all, and I couldn't, the one that I could relate the most was the open, I think it's the competitive, where whomever wins, wins. But again, I just don't feel that that is going to yield the proper results that would generate equal representation for anyone. So I almost feel like it's a lose situation. And I wonder if we could begin to create a win-win situation where there's just equal representation amongst the ranks to represent all the different communities that we have.
Thank you very much. It may be that it's a proposal that we haven't thought of yet, so
Right, and
really
that's
appreciate it.
And that, Antonio, we're not going to be making a decision immediately, of course. As I said at the outset, if you would like to, put to paper, maybe give it some thought, perhaps you'll listen to tonight's, and see what people have. Maybe you can come up with something that hasn't been yet codified into any of those proposals that were in the booklet. So
thinks about it.
Okay, Antonia, I want to thank you very much. I'm going to return you to attendee status.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Antonia.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
I would next like to call upon Vincent Riggins. Mr. Riggins did submit a written proposal. It was brief, and let me see if I can do this correctly. Vincent Riggins, you are being promoted to a panelist so that we could see you and hear your testimony. Let's see if you show up here. Let me try again. Okay, I don't see Mr. Riggins. I think I pushed the button the way I was supposed to. If Mr. Riggins perhaps could sign back in.
Oh, he's here.
Oh, he's here. Mr. Riggins, where are you? Do you hear us?
Good evening. I am with you now.
Okay, Mr. Riggins. Would you like to be live, or we have your image?
Yeah, my image, that's good enough. I'm kind of relaxing.
Okay.
Going through this long process.
Yeah, sure. Okay, Mr. Riggins, just 1 minute. Let me log you in. It's 9:19. And I guess I'm going to start off by asking you the question I've been asking other people. Are you currently a member of the Democratic County Committee?
Yes.
And which assembly district or neighborhood do you live in?
The capital of Brooklyn, East New York.
Thank you, Mr. Riggins.
60th district.
I'm sorry?
60th district.
Thank you. Okay, you have 3 minutes. Please proceed.
My written testimony, I guess you could add that to the record. But what I was really trying to do is get a better understanding. And I want to applaud Sammy and the other people that took the initiative to raise this issue. A little bit about myself. I'll probably go over the 3 minutes, but I'm probably one of the only people that ever, on this panel, that ever went to Stonewall Inn back in 1969. Anybody else? Okay. Now, I didn't go there as a part of that community, but when I was going to Brooklyn College, a number of our associates did identify as gay back then. And we didn't sit in judgment with them, but as a part of the Black Power movement during the 1960s, they was also considered part of our comrades. So I'm saying that to say this, that I'm definitely impartial. I would just want to get a better understanding. And my question would be to the panel is, do non-conforming by people and all the other initials that I am not learned on feel like heterosexuals are not able to represent them in the political arena? Or is it simply what you're trying to do is just make space for a specific human being centered around gender? I hope that question was posed correctly or received correctly, because I'm a little lost on what's really happening here. I do understand that they want to, I don't know, somehow move away from the designation of male and female. I don't really understand the reason for that, because heterosexuals got to have rights too. And when you start parsing out certain sections of the population, you kind of wade into the spectrum of reverse discrimination, I think. But I'm going to leave it right there. I just need some clarification, and any one of you guys can offer me that. But I do appreciate what Sammy did, and infinite respect for NKD for the work they've been doing in the county committee as well. And as Democrats, one thing this last election showed us is that we better step our game up and move away from biases and improve and widen the tent. When this country is evenly divided, it's important that Democrats, and I believe that in the borough of Brooklyn, this Democratic County Committee should be leading not only the borough, but the rest of the country for Democrats. So we have to establish a platform that's conducive for everyone. And I know it may be a challenge, and I'm going to stop right there. If I went over my 3 minutes, I appreciate it. And if I didn't, hopefully anybody in this meeting can add a little clarification.
Thank you, Mr. Riggins. Is there any response to Mr. Riggins or questions for him?
I've just, hey, Mr. Riggins, thank you for your comment. I think like to answer your question, if I understood it correctly, I think like one, do we believe heterosexual communities can represent our community? Totally. However, there's added value because our experiences also shapes our politics. And I think like there's a uniqueness in our experience as TGNC folks, queer, non-binary folks that really help to shape our politics in our value system. And I think like that's very important for our political engagement and discourse. I hear your point about like the, and I think like the overall goal and task here is to increase access to the table, right? And increase the accessibility of the table with folks who have identities that have shaped their experiences in this world, to help ensure that we create stronger, better public policy that works for all of us. So that's my take, and that's hopefully that clarifies some things.
Okay.
I will.
Josh Pierre.
Yeah, I just want to add to what Jason said as well. As a cisgendered Black man, very often in communities of color, we're provided with so little of the pie. The concept of an increasing pie is just foreign to us. I don't consider the idea that a non-binary person would be put at the table a loss for me as a cisgender person. I don't believe that adding Native Americans and Hispanics to the table takes away from me personally. We're doing exactly what you recommended at the end of your statement, which is we are a big tent, let's make it a bigger tent. So it's not really, for me personally, a function of us trying to take rights away from heterosexuals, which is, and by the way, it's actually not about heterosexuality at all. But it's really saying, as you said in your statement, that while you were at Brooklyn College, you did recognize that we had brothers and sisters that were in the LGBT community.
Mm-hmm.
Surely I'm sure you realize that those brothers and sisters had a very unique experience that you probably didn't have to suffer through, but you didn't discriminate against them. Because they had that unique experience, they have a unique voice, and we want to ensure that unique voice is added to the dialogue.
Okay, thank you. Well, I want to thank Mr. Riggins for his presentation and testimony tonight. And we will move on to a next.
Chair.
Wait, who's speaking? Who raised their hand?
Yeah, Samuel
Sammy.
Olivares.
Oh, yes, Sammy. Yes.
Another point of information. Yeah, I think it's just to be brief because, and thank you, Mr. Riggins, for coming and speak to respond to his question, because many other panelists might have the same questions. And as others members mentioned, we had a education session with academics and many others about sex and gender. The important thing to understand here is that there is a differentiation between sexual orientation and gender identity. And when it comes to non-binary, transgender, and gender non-conforming, where we're talking today is about the lack of opportunity or representation for gender identity, how people identify, not their sexual orientation. So today, this rule is absolutely not about heterosexuals or gay or even the LGBT community. It's about gender identity. So those people who does not identify as male or females, they identify as non-binary, agender, genderqueer, gender non-conforming, transgender. So that's the difference. And yeah, thank you for the question. So I hope that clarifies.
Mr. Chair, can I beg your indulgence for 5 seconds?
Yes.
Okay. So, Sammy, I appreciate you and for what you're doing. So so if they had a box that said other, and you proudly identify how you self-identify, would that suffice? And that way, wait a minute, and that way anyone, because I believe I heard so many different initials to self-identify people in the gay community. I don't even know if I'm using the right terminology. I'm sorry if I'm ignorant to that, but you guys said some letters I've never heard before tonight. So I heard there's about 32 different classifications for for self-identifying what gender you are. Is that correct? So how would they accommodate that in any type of election without you guys specifically, one, identifying who you are proudly and explaining to the general population that's not familiar with that lifestyle that would serve to educate us a lot better as we move forward. And that's it. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Riggins. Well, first is that, we're not talking about lifestyle, lifestyle, how people wear their hair and all that. It's about gender identity and gender expression. So I think you hit the nail. So there are proposals out of the 9 that actually proposes having 3 categories: male, female, and the other gender. And I think what we have been hearing here is how the otherization of certain marginalized groups create that emotional impact. And many groups, marginalized groups throughout history, have been classified as the other. And that's what other TGNC, LGBTQ speakers have brought of the impact that can have personally into being categorized as the other. And to the point of being very complex and being 32 genders, yes, precisely because of that, as the story as you mentioned in Stonewall era and others, people identify as gay, but in reality, there are multiples of genders. So to avoid that issue of having to disclose or to explain to voters who might not need that explanation of someone's private gender, that's why there are proposals that would allow, like number 6, to, for example, allow everyone to run regardless of their gender, because as you mentioned, there are more than 32 genders that will be classified under the others. So to your question about having a category that will be male, female, and the other suffix, it might not suffix to the extent that there are more than there are many other genders beyond other, right? And I think there's a lot of people who do not will not like to be classified or reduced to the other gender classification, when in fact we can allow everyone to run regardless of their gender. But to answer your question, that's one of the proposals, and yeah, it would be great if you can read them all again with this new understanding and see which one you think that might align to what you are proposing.
Thank you for that response.
Okay, and with that, we're now at 9:30. Mr. Riggins, I'm going to return you to attendee status so you would continue to be able to watch. Thank you very much for your testimony. Okay, members of the task force, I am now going to call on Cooper Miller. Mr. Cooper Miller, are you there?
Yes, hello.
Okay, and 1 minute, Mr. Cooper, just please hold on. Task force members, if you look at your spreadsheet, Mr. Miller did submit a comprehensive analysis. Let's start off with your 3 minutes and see how we go, Mr. Miller. You have the floor, but I do want to ask you, Mr. Miller, are you a member of the county committee?
Yes, I am, for Assembly District 56, Election District 84.
And what is the neighborhood?
Bed-Stuy.
Okay, you have the floor.
My name's Cooper Miller. My pronouns are he, him, and his. I would like to commend this task force for its thoughtful and thorough work. The effort of this Democratic Party County Committee to pursue full gender inclusion is long overdue, but not too late. In the face of the growing existential threat of authoritarianism, nationalism, bigotry, and hate, there has never been a more important time to expand the electorate and make political involvement more inclusive. We must rectify Article 2 of the party rules, because not only does it exclude gender nonconforming and gender fluid folks, it also inadvertently disenfranchises potential committee candidates, both female and male identifying. I was raised in a feminist household, and I've been an LGBTQ ally since 1991, when my parent came out to me as a trans woman. In the wake of the gruesome murder of Brandon Tina and the wrongful death of Tyra Hunter 25 years ago, my parent and I proudly joined a group of activists at the first National Transgender Lobby Day in Washington, D.C. Back then, family acceptance was radical, even to a progressive feminist like my mother. So although I'm a cis man, I've witnessed firsthand how a change to established gender binary norms can create a reactionary pushback. Whatever the new policy, I recommend that this task force reconvene after 4 more elections to run a follow-up survey of the elected officials. In this way, if the policy is ratified, the committee can revisit this work to reflect on its success or its unintended outcomes and propose appropriate amendment. This would also make ratification more tenable to voting members reluctant to support change. Gender identity terminology is still evolving. Self-identifying terms such as transvestite and transsexual that were once acceptable within the community 30 years ago are now considered inappropriate and insulting. Only a few years ago, transgendered was accepted nomenclature, but it has fallen out of fashion. Some may also choose to identify with culturally specific terms, such as the native term two-spirit, and not feel represented by more generic terms. Therefore, I don't support Proposal 2, which would codify gender language that might fall out of use or not fully represent people. Of all the proposals, proposal number 6 is the simplest, and in my opinion, the best option to maximize inclusive participation regardless of gender identity. It has the additional benefit of preventing vacant spots in election districts in the instance of only one gender competing. Considering that the majority of the petition candidates in the last 5 elections have identified female, EDs with 2 cis men committee members will be possible, but statistically rare. To keep our democratically elected government healthy, inclusion and enfranchisement are values that Democrats must promote in tandem. And I have more detailed responses to the proposals, but I figured I would sort of stop there because that might be 3 minutes. So let me know.
Yeah, you're over the 3 minutes. Why don't we ask the task force members if they have any questions for Mr. Miller? Lisa Fain.
Oh, thank you, Cooper, for that, and for your personal story. It's always very helpful to hear that. I agree that proposal number 6 is easy. It's the easiest one. Just toss out the rules that have been in place for many decades, that are protected and ensured that women have an on-ramp and are actually encouraged to be involved in the political process. But are you willing to say that that these protections are not necessary, or that somehow we live in a post-sexist world? How do you, because you seem to be somebody, as you expressed, who's very attuned to marginalized communities and the impact of oppression. How do you feel about doing away with those protections? And stuff there.
Well, you know, one of the things that I had to ask myself was what happens when no women are running. You know, I really tried to do a little bit of game theory in my analysis. Although I'm not a mathematician, I thought, well, this would be really relevant for somebody who does game theory. And I thought about male representation in extreme instances, like when women aren't running, and why they wouldn't run. And one thing that popped up was the fact right now we have a pandemic where women are disproportionately affected, and that potentially means that their ability to run in a district is reduced, and therefore, you know, there's this sort of tragically possible case where a climate catastrophe or a terrorist attack, where a district loses a significant portion of a gendered population, and that having representation should be more important for a region that's distressed. So like I balanced it against enfranchisement, you know, and thinking that like if we, you know, with this current system, men and women are disenfranchised by the fact that they're forced to compete within one or two category. So if at least that's my understanding, and maybe correct me if I'm wrong, but if 3 men are running or 3 women are running, they all have to compete for one spot, and the male position goes vacant, and therefore that seems disenfranchising for women as well as men. And particularly when I look at the numbers, that a larger percentage of women are actually running in these elections, that means more women are losing the opportunity to be on the county committee. So that's sort of how I thought about it.
May I ask you, Mr. Miller, you're a county committee member. How did you find out about the position? How did you, any particular connection?
I think it was probably through the New Kings Democrats, Rep Your Block. I think that's how I got involved.
Okay. All right. Do we have one last question for Mr. Miller? Jessie Pierce.
Thank you, Chair. I don't have a question, Mr. Miller. I just want to thank you for coming to share your experience with us. I'm very grateful.
Thank you.
Mr. Miller, thank you very much for your presentation and your written comments. And I'm going to return you to attendee status so that if you would like to continue watching on Zoom, you may do so. It is being live streamed on YouTube, but you can be there on Zoom to watch. Thank you. Members of the task force. I am now going to see if Peter Finnan is here. Peter Finnan, would you like to unmute your microphone, please, so that we can hear you? Okay, Peter, there you are. And let me just make note of the time. It is now 9:41. And just let me annotate my other sheet here.
Okay.
And Mr. Finnan.
Yes.
May I ask you, are you a member of the Kings County Democratic County Committee?
Yes, I'm a county committee member in Bensonhurst.
And would that be the 47th Assembly District?
Yes, it is.
Okay, you have the floor.
Great. First, I just want to say thank you to everybody who's spoken so far. I feel like not only has this been productive, but also I'm learning a lot. So I appreciate that. I'm going to keep it pretty brief because I feel like everything that I have written was kind of touched on by people already. But I just wanted to voice my support for Proposal 6 because I do believe that it is a step towards gender equity. I believe that all the other proposals still maintain a gender barrier. And I think the work to achieve like a representative committee needs to come from community outreach and not a 1938 rule. I think even having to identify myself as a male county committee member has been kind of embarrassing because I do think it's my duty to represent all the people who are in my very, very small district. I've been in the YouTube chat and some people have made some great comments about how Manhattan, the committee doesn't have a gender barrier and it is 60% women. And also some people have mentioned that they weren't able to get on the county committee because there were 3 women running, whereas men were able to file petitions and automatically were assigned to the committee. And I think that eliminating the gender barrier will actually bring more women into the committee. Judging by the numbers that were in the booklet that you sent to us, that's what it seemed like to me. I'm open to being wrong on that, and I like I said, I'm learning a lot here, but that's what it seemed like to me. Yeah, so like I said, I'm trying to keep it brief, but I do think we need to do more work to reach out to transgender, gender nonconforming, and non-binary people to get them to join the committees, and also in general to, I guess, just be more representative.
Mr. Finnan, if I could just ask you, because I am interested, how do people find out about the county committee and decide to run? What was your situation?
You know, New York, it's local political groups. So, I mean, somebody from South Central Brooklyn Democrats for Progress reached out to me, and I was taken with the idea that people from their block can represent their block, like rep your block, and New Kings Democrats have encouraged people to do.
Thank you. Task force members, do any of you have any questions for Mr. Finnan? And I see that District Leader Schneider has a question.
Thank you, Chairman, for your confidence. Peter, I don't have a question. I just when I read your comments, it struck me because when I was first running for district leader, I got an email that said, hey, I really like everything you have to say, but why do you constantly identify yourself as running for the male district leader spot? And it was quite angry that that in addition to expressing my views, I also had to defend a gendered system that the position itself caused me to identify as running for the male district leader position. And that in of itself put me in a very uncomfortable position in the conversation, because nothing that I was running for required it to be gendered. And this was one instance where I got feedback that was, harsh, but only because I had to explain the system that created this. So I fully appreciate where you're coming from and the discomfort that you have in identifying the position. So thank you very much for your comment. It resonated a lot with me.
That reminds me, I saw another YouTube comment. I believe it was Derek who spoke here earlier, who said some people don't necessarily want to have to identify themselves to their neighbors when they're knocking on doors, just because, I mean, you don't have a familiarity with the people that you're speaking with. So having to say I'm running for, male, female, or even other, is going to, it's gonna make people turn their heads a little bit. And I don't think we should have to put people in that position.
Task force members, is there anybody else? I'm scanning the board. Anybody else who would like to ask Mr. Finnan a question?
Thank you so much, guys.
Did I just see someone raise their hand?
No, that was me.
No. Was it Jessie Pierce? Did you raise your hand?
I'm sorry. I was waving at Peter as he was leaving.
I got excited. I waved, and then I feel like I set off a chain of hands.
You know what? Did Lisa Fain raise a hand?
I was joining in the waving.
I see. I do have a question, Mr. Finnan.
Sure.
One of the proposals that was put in there, which was to just open up for discussion purposes, is it's like a variant on proposal 6, and I'm specifically talking about proposal 7. That would have everybody run in their election districts where they're running and the top people win. But in addition, there would be member-at-large positions created, and these were just a couple of suggestions: non-cisgender, physically disabled, veteran, union member, Pacific Islander, Native American, just in case people wanted to run for an at-large position of that type. Do you see any value in that at all, or you think everything in the county committee should just be by ED and the top people win?
I think to go back to what I was saying about having to identify.
I'm sorry for interrupting. No. What I also wanted to say is, just because one of the positions would be for non-cisgender, that doesn't mean at all that they can't run in an election district. This would be on top of it all. Go ahead.
I think just going back to what I was saying, whereas we're having to identify yourself. I mean, I see the value in having positions for underrepresented groups, absolutely, and I'd be open to hearing people who are in support of that explain why. But I do think that opening up the floor to anybody will net better results.
Okay, any other questions for Mr. Finnan? I'm scanning the board. No, okay, Mr. Finnan, I'm going to find you here. When I find you, okay. I'm going to return you to the status of attendee. And
thank you.
Thank you for bringing us up to date on some of those comments on YouTube. Because I don't think any of us have YouTube on. Otherwise, we would be confused with the 7-second delay or whatever. Thank you so much.
No problem.
Thank you.
Members of the task force, we have exhausted the list of attendees who wish to speak tonight. I thought I saw in my eye another one earlier, but that individual is no longer there. We are scheduled to meet tomorrow night again at 7:30. I do hope to continue reviewing the comments that have come in, especially those today. We have two sources of comments, and I'm mentioning this also so that those who are watching on YouTube, if you want to take this down, again, if you want to submit comments by email, please do so to King's Dem Task Force. That is one word, KINGSDEMTASKFORCE at AOL.com. Give us your written comments. Indicate if you would like to speak tomorrow night. Also, the Democratic Party does have on its website, I believe, a link which you fill out a Google Doc form, and that creates a spreadsheet. And I'm going to be reviewing the spreadsheet for people who submitted late last night and today. I believe I did see some people who specifically indicated they wanted to present oral comments in addition to written comments. And before we adjourn for the night, it is now 9:52. I would open the floor. If we did say we could go to 10. I mean, we could leave early, or if you want 8 minutes to maybe just make any comments about any of our presenters' proposals or suggestions, or say anything else to the public while we're still live streaming. Is there anyone who would like to take advantage of that opportunity? And I saw Jennifer Fauché raise her hand.
Yes, a couple of times tonight, the category of at-large came up. Now, just to be clear on how such a position would be used as a county committee person, would there be any rights taken away? How would they still have the right to vote, and who would their allegiances go to? Because just sitting on the county committee, there is usually such an organization, and everything there has been by AD. So how would that work in your mind?
An at-large member would have a right to a vote, would have a right to a vote. I don't know how else to put it. In terms of a permanent solution, the only proposals that have at-large, I believe, is Proposal one, which was maintain equal representation of male and females, and then add members at large for individuals who do not identify as male or female. I believe the only other one with at large was proposal number 7, where in election districts, anybody wanted to run without identifying yourself could do so. If it's a 2-person ED, it would be 2 winners, 3-person ED, 3 winners, 4-person ED, 4 winners. Plus, we would have those other additional categories, and it wasn't designed to be limiting just to them, just for the purpose of someone maybe just to try to attract people who have not been traditionally represented. Of course, they could run in an ED, but perhaps that individual might feel they would lose in an ED for some reason or another. So that would give them an opportunity to run as at large. Perhaps, let's say, an elderly person who's a veteran might feel that person couldn't campaign as actively in a contest. So that person might not want to run in an election district, but might file for the veteran seat on the belief that there would be no one else filing, and get some representation that way. So those would be the only proposals that I recall having at large. And I would also say to the public the following, and to the members, if we eliminated, there's nothing magical about an even number or 2 or 4. It only comes about because if you require an equal ratio between men and women, you can't have the number 3. In Manhattan, there are some EDs with 3. So if you eliminate identification as male or female, you could have 3 also. So you could have 2, 3, or 4. And that's also something for people to consider. Some of the proposals, even with the ones with the 3, had some variations. So we can be a little creative. And I hope that answers your question, Jennifer. Was there some, oh, wait, you know what? I think I saw Sammy. Sammy, Jared, Doug, Sammy, you had your hand up. Or
I did not,
or
but
you
I
were just
will.
waving to me.
But I wanted to thank you, just to recognize the courage and to thank all of the county committee members and Brooklynites and voters that join us. I think that this is what, make our, party and our borough so vibrant. And it's really encouraging to see the time and the effort that people made to read through those 9 proposals and really came back with very detailed ideas and thoughts about what they think that will make this party more inclusive and more democratic. And at least that's what I personally want to thrive, and we share that vision to make this party more inclusive. So I encourage everyone to spread the word that tomorrow will be the last day, and that we really want to hear from you all to ensure that we're taking into consideration all of this point of view. So I just want to thank everyone, and for my fellow task force members to really hear what people have to say very respectfully. And I'm highly encouraged to what we're hearing, and to remind that what basically summarized today, we heard that people want to run regardless of any gender, any classification that put them in a box, but to really who they are, what they have to contribute. So I am grateful to hear all that support for the proposal number 6 and many others. So thank you.
I know I did say I was going to call on Jared. Someone has texted me that an inquiry was made on YouTube as to why I am asking people how they found out about the county committee. And the answer is because a suggestion was made at one of our meetings earlier by someone that more outreach needs to be made for people to run for county committee. So I'm curious how people find out about it. And so that during this 2-year term, efforts can somehow be expanded to make Democrats in Brooklyn aware of the position and that they can run for it. So I'm just curious how.
So Aaron, what you're saying then is you are going to support the efforts that groups that have been making these efforts for years have been doing, right? So there are groups out there that have been doing a great job doing it. I think if you've seen today, most people have identified that they learned about county committee through one of their local political groups. The most common to be mentioned were Rep Your Block. I think there was a South Central, Brooklyn United for Progress. And so I think if I hear what you're saying correctly, you are applauding those efforts and trying to figure out ways in which they can be emulated, correct?
I applaud any group that seeks to urge people to run for county committee, whether it's a club, a district leader, or another entity. In 1976, I actually found out about county committee earlier when I was younger. And I have to tell you, this may be embarrassing to say, but at that point, that was one of my big ambitions, to run for county committee when I turned 18. And I did. I had a contest. The organization club at that time, Doug, actually put someone outside the polling place with leaflets against me running for county committee. I happened to win, and the rest is history, as my political cohorts know from those days back when. And so I encourage
Well,
people to run for county committee. But Doug,
I'll just say, Aaron,
I
then
did.
if people are interested in learning how Rep Your Block has done this, I'm sure they'd be willing to share with you information about how to do such an organizing campaign and drive, because they've done it so very well. So thank you for acknowledging the amazing work that they've done. I think it means a lot. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
I acknowledge the work of everybody who's recruited people for county committee. I acknowledge.
Chair, I forgot something. Chair.
1 second, because I do
Okay.
want to respond. I acknowledge everybody. Okay, as an election attorney, there were people who reached out to me over the years. I printed petitions for their 1ED so they could run, but I don't want to monopolize. There were some other people who wanted to say something, so I want to go in order. Jared Rader had his hand up.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to go back to our first speaker, Derek, on behalf of LAD. And I just want to thank TS Candy for something, TS, something that you pointed out. And that is, as president of LID, that is the lack of trans women on our board. And I just want to thank you for bringing that to attention, because that is something that we, as a club and as an organization, are very, very focused on working and changing. And I'm really, really looking forward to hearing from trans women how we can better improve our outreach and what we can do about what we can do within the club to make us a better club for trans women. So I wanted to thank you for that. Truly, thank you.
And the next person on my list, I believe Lisa Fain had her hand up.
Thank you, Aaron. I just wanted to just really point out and highlight that this panel and this forum tonight was a model of how we can have an open conversation about these issues, about sex and gender, and how that plays out in different. So I just want to highlight that is something that I would like to work toward, is to be able to have conversations about these issues from different people's perspectives and different belief systems, and that we're able to treat each other respectfully. And I hope that on the chat in the future that's really a little more highlighted and allowed. I also want to tell everybody out there who's taken time to be here tonight that we on this committee are also fighting. There are people on this committee who are fighting to make sure that the county committee is actually a democratic organization, a democratic entity, and that it actually has power. And I think the big elephant in the room right now is that the county committee does not have the power that it should. And what little power it had is being hijacked. And so I just want you to know that a part of this, that we are not ignoring the fact that it's important for us to make sure that people can get on county committee and that it's meaningful and that it creates meaningful change for this party going forward. So
Thank you. Doug, you're clapping your hand, but you're muted, so I couldn't hear it.
I think Lisa spoke very, very well, so I'll clap loudly so you can hear it.
Thank you. I did see a hand up from Sammy Oliveras.
I wanted to quickly thank you, Chair. I wanted to quickly enter into the record that despite them not being signed up to public comment, that two elected officials from Brooklyn submitted written testimonies for this public forum, including State Senator Julia Salazar and Congresswoman Nidia Velasquez, both in support of proposal number 6. Thank you.
Thank you. Before we adjourn, is there any other comments? I'm scanning the board. Nobody else has their hand raised up. It is now 10:05. Oh, wait, Josh Scaller.
I would just like to, it may be superfluous, but I would just like to state how appreciative I am of this committee and the work that they've done. It's been a real pleasure to be working with all of you. So thank you so much, each and every one of you.
Thank you, Josh Scaler. Anything else? The task force, the Kings County Democratic Task Force on Gender Discrimination and Representation stands in adjournment until 7:30 p.m. tomorrow night. Thank you, everybody.
Good night.
Thank you, Aaron.
Good night.